Hey guys, so now we're going to go over chapter 2, which is all about reasoning without the text. So, chapter 2.1, we talk about the author's argument. And remember, when you're trying to learn how to do cars, you need to start no-timed, okay? And I cannot stress that enough. You start no-timed until you understand how this stuff works. So, one thing that you need to do is you need to understand the claims, right? The assertions that the author is making, both main and supporting. As you are reading the passage, you should be picking up on things, okay? When you're asked these questions, it shouldn't be the first time you're thinking about it. Like, as I'm reading Cars passages, I'm thinking, okay, what is the author talking about? I'm looking at, okay, how is the author portraying it, right? What evidence is the author showing, right? You have to look at, okay, what assumptions is the author have. You need to make sure you spot what the author takes for granted but does not explicitly state, okay? So these often underline the reason and are key to MCAT questions, okay? So this is how you figure out the reason for what the author is writing, okay? So in conclusion, we're going to say understanding the logical outcome of the argument, what the author wants the reader to believe or accept. That's pretty much one part of your cars knowledge that you guys should be able to do very well if you want to continue improving your car skill. So next we need to evaluate strengths of arguments, okay? So you need to think about it as you're reading. Again, this isn't happening when the question is being asked. I really want to emphasize that. This is happening as you're reading. So as you're reading, you need to think, okay, what is the author talking about? Is what the author saying makes sense? Okay, good. If it makes sense, you keep reading, you take note of it in your head, or you can highlight it. So you also need to look for flawed reasonings, right? Like something that doesn't make sense, or like info that doesn't make sense, right? Because you would think about it, like sometimes they will ask you questions like which does out of the article does the author least support or something like that, right? So next you need to look for evidence quality. So is the evidence relevant, sufficient, and trustworthy? Now this one is key, right? So when you're reading this stuff and you're taking note of it, you need to think about, okay, how could this apply to a question? Did the author prove this in the passage? Okay, it's like, what did the author prove from this passage? And then you need to make sure you know counter arguments. Okay, so you need to know whether the author addresses opposing viewpoints and how effectively that they do it. So for 2.3, we need to understand the role of examples and analogies. And this one to me is a pretty important one, again, that I see on the MCAT a lot. So you really need to understand analogies, like truly. A lot of times you'll get things like, the author said this and how does it portray to like a real life thing, right? So like you really need to understand these analogies. So analogies draw conclusions to something more familiar, helping the reader understand complex concepts. So on the MCAT, you may be asked how an analogy strengthens or weakens argument, or what the analogy is intended to illustrate. So next, for chapter 2.4, you need to recognize implications and inferences. Okay, so what is an implication, right? What follows, so what the author's reasoning that is not directly stated, right? So pretty much what the author thinks you already know, you need to pick up on that. And inferences, so what can you conclude based on the text, right? But only by what is written. This is key. Avoid outside knowledge. I'm talking to myself right now because I get it wrong every time because I use outside knowledge. Please don't be a fool like me. Avoid outside knowledge. Please stick to what's in the passage. There's been a lot of times where I would do a passage and I would check why it's wrong, and the reason why it's wrong is legitimately because the author did not state this, though this is right, it was not stated in the passage. Okay, very key. And for 2.5, strategies and reasoning within the text. So this is another pretty important one. So what the author is trying to convey, or how are they doing it, break down the argument, right? You want to break down your argument to, okay, what did they claim? How did they support the claim? And what is the conclusion? So when you're evaluating these type of questions, eliminate answer choices that go beyond the passage. Okay, you need to ignore stuff that is beyond the passage or rely on assumptions not supported by the text. So the key thing with this chapter, as we can see, is we really need to focus on only the text and nothing else. No prior knowledge, nothing. We only care about what the author is saying. When you're reading your Cars passages, you need to come into it like you know nothing. You don't know anything about the topic. You have no idea what's going on. You need to learn from the passage. Okay? So next we'll go to chapter 3.